So from the VS Code, do you guys know how to create a trigger? So if you just create a trigger here, so if you can just click on the Control Shift P, which is nothing but the command panel. Okay. So here you will have the if you type the trigger, you can have the create Apex trigger. Okay. If you do that, it will ask you the name, which name you want to have. Let's say contact trigger. Okay. And in this folder, I'm trying to create it. Before we start the trigger, you understood what are the trigger variables. I mean, the trigger context variables and trigger events. Correct? You know about that? The trigger context variables and trigger events. I have explained you in the first class, right? In the development. So when we are writing any trigger for an object, the best practice is to make only one trigger per object. That's not a mandatory, but that's a best practice. The reason is, if you write multiple triggers, the platform doesn't know which trigger needs to be executed first. So your business logic will not be in sequence order. So you may miss out, some of your important business logics. Understand? So that's the reason the best practice is to go with the only one trigger per one object. If we want to go one trigger per one object, in the sense, we have to declare all our events into this trigger. So here the S object is what? Contact is the S object, because we are writing on the contact object, right? And this is the syntax of the trigger. Trigger and trigger name on what is the object name. Okay, so this is the high level syntax. So in this one we have to pass our events. So how many events this trigger has to be executed? So before insert, before update, before delete, right? Again we have after insert, after update, after delete, after and delete. These are the events which we have present on a trigger. Am I correct? So we can declare all the events in a one trigger, because we are going with a one best practice. Okay. If we are not doing this one, if you create multiple triggers on a one object, what happens is, if you have a before insert in this trigger and after the before insert into the other trigger, you doesn't exactly know which trigger will execute first. Okay, so that's the reason we are declaring all the events into one trigger, and we can execute the logic based on our events by using the trigger context variables. I have explained you the trigger context variable is right. What are the trigger context variables are? So trigger dot is before. So when I say trigger dot is before, this is the boolean which will return true or false. Okay, if the trigger is in the before event, it will jump into this logic. right? Else if trigger dot is after. So we have two things here. This is for before events. This is for after events. Okay. So you know about the if else if concepts. I hope, right? Because you already raised your hands, you know the development, some of the concepts, right? So in every language, we will have the if else, right? If means if the logic is true, if the condition is true, then inside this will be executed. Okay. Else if means if this is true, this won't be executed because this will execute this logic and the next things will not be executed. Okay. If we put the else means if any of these conditions are true, the default one will be executed. Okay. So here what I'm trying to do here is I'm setting up my context here. What is the real use of the you know real use case to set off all these things is we were using only one trigger per one object and we want to execute a particular logic in a particular events. So that's the reason we have to set that. So otherwise, as I said earlier also, we should not execute our logic unnecessarily. Correct? Only based on our business conditions only we have to execute. Unnecessary conditions we should not use it. So so here what I can do is trigger dot is insert. Else if trigger dot is update. Trigger dot is delete. If you see here, if the event is before event and inside this before event, if my event is my daemon statement is insert, the insert related logic will be worked out here. Okay. Insert logic will be defined here. Okay. If my trigger is not insert, if my trigger is update, then update logic will be defined here. In the same way, delete also. Delete logic here. Okay. Understood, guys? So in the same fashion, we'll do the same thing in after also. Correct? So here one extra thing is in the after we have trigger dot is undelete. Okay. So undelete logic here. So now this is the skeleton of the trigger. If you want to write down the trigger, this is the skeleton. You have to write the any trigger in this way. Okay. So that you will execute the logic based on our business use case. If I want to pre-populate my contact date of birth based on the current date automatically, then the before events will be executed. In the before events, You no need to do the DML statements on the record. That will automatically does. Okay. After events, when we use the after event in the sense, if you understand the execution flow, the after only will have the ID in the insert, and also the after events will be post of your validations, which means that your data is valid, so you are ready to do any of your business logics. So on the other object, so on the other object, let's say if I have updated my address in a contact, if I want to update some of the fields on my account object, then I can use the is after, because the DML statements will be really works on the after events, not in the before events. Okay, understood, guys? Yeah. So this is how this is what the skeleton. Now you can just save this and then deploy to your the source arc. So this has been deployed to the source arc, and the source arc will have the triggers. In the Apex trigger, you can see now account, contact, employee. Okay, so a lot more things. So someone is created an employee 1, 2, 3. I just created this one. I think Divanshu was created demo work 1, work 2, work 3. So this is not really good to go. Okay, because one object should have only one trigger. Okay, if you create trigger multiple triggers in a single S object, which means the single object, what it causes, we don't know which one will execute first. So let's say if you have written the before insert here, all the things are there. Okay, if you need to update something before insert, you have to update some logic. Based on that, if you need to do some other logic, then the platform doesn't understand that which trigger has to be executed first, either work 1, work 2, work 3, or employee trigger. Correct? So to avoid all these confusions, we will go with the best practices. Okay, understood, guys? So here we will go with the only one trigger per one object. So now we created the contact trigger here. The contact trigger we will be in this one. Okay, once we created this contact, whatever the logic we will implement, we can implement into our trigger. So let's say contact. So in this contact, let's say what we can do in the new phone number, title, mobile, fax, email. Which one I can do level? Okay. If I want to set for any contact, I want to set the level is the primary. Okay. If I want to set this automatically, then what I have to do? If I want to pre-populate the level value as a primary whenever the new contact is being created. Okay. If this is a requirement, so this requirement will be done in a multiple ways using your workflow rule. You can do this one. Am I correct? By using your process builder, you can do that. By using your flows, you can do that. The same thing how we can do it in your triggers. Let's see here. So in the before insert, first we have to understand this one. For any trigger will be bulkified. So I will introduce one more thing called bulkification. Anybody knows about this concept? Bulkification. Bulkification in the sense, as I said earlier also, if we are working on 100 records, at a time. Okay, our logic should support for 100 records. Okay, which means that we should not encounter of any of the our limitations. No limits should hit. Okay, which means that limitations. How many of you know the limitations, right? I mean the kernel limits. We have maximum of 100 SQLs, maximum of 150 DML statements, 50,000 rows can be retrieved, right? So lot other things. Most of the things we will end up with these things only. Okay, the CPU time limit. So there are a lot of other things which is depending on the limits. So here, if you try to insert up the 100 records, your trigger should support for 100 records. Okay, how it will support is your trigger should be bulkified. The bulkification means if you inserting 100 records in a single time, it should not hit your 100 sockets, 150 DML statements, the 50,000 rows and CPQ limits, etc., etc., etc. You will have a lot other things also. Okay, email messages also will be there. So I'll show you those things. Okay, so here to make our trigger bulkified, we have the concepts of the collections. I'll show you that here. Okay, so if I'm dealing with the any of the things, any of the record, a trigger will contains each record, correct? If I'm inserting 100 records, in the sense the trigger will be executed 100 times, right? The context of the trigger will holds the 100. So here everybody knows about the contact. Variable name is, I would say, contact record. So here trigger.new. So this is a collection I said, right? So the trigger.new is a list, right? This list will holds the new instance of the records. If I am inserting 100, this trigger.new will be holds the 100 records. If I'm inserting the 200 records, this trigger.new will be holds for the 200 records. Okay, which means that whatever I'm executing here, the logic will be logic should be support for 200 records at a time. Okay, let's say if I do something like this, account A equals to select ID from account where ID equals to contact record dot account ID. This circle you understand, right? Which means we are getting the account record based on the contact account record ID. So it will fetch the account which is related to the contact. Okay, if you write your socket inside your for loop, if you are inserting 200 records, but now what happened, this for loop will execute 200 times, correct? Inside the for loop, whatever the logic is there, that will be executed for the 200 times, and you have a limit of how many? Only 100, correct? If we have 100 of only, I mean the 100 SOQL should be executed for the entire transaction, then you will get into the SOQL 101 exception. Understood, guys, this particular statement? So in the same fashion, I'm trying to update the account name with my contact name. Okay, last name. Now what I can do, update. Account record. So here there is a two things here. Okay, one thing is 100 SOQL, here 150 update statements, correct? Which means DML statements. In this case, will this logic will really work out here? No, right? Whatever you do, you should not do any of the sockets or DML statements inside your for loop. Okay, this is a very, 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 very important thing for a trigger perspective. Not only the trigger, in anywhere throughout our Apex coding, we have to remember the very first point is that we should not write any of the sockets or SOSL or anything DML statements within our for loops, because we doesn't know how many times this will really executes. This is the one thing. Okay, the other thing is, let's assume that the contact, okay, if the contact have a multiple opportunities, right? Multiple opportunities in the sense one will be in a one record. If I have a many records, in the sense I have to use my collections. Am I correct? List of opportunities equals to, let's assume this one. Select ID from opportunity. Where contact ID equals to config.id. So now I'm trying to fetch all the opportunities which are related to this contact. Okay. In this case, what really happens? It will get the list of records, correct? More than one opportunity. So here, if you try to update only one record here, try to do off zero. So you know about the indexing, right? Index. If this is a list and this list have the index, if the index of this is, if you specify these things, off zero, off one, off two, okay. Let's say I'm trying to update. Come on. Opportunity account ID with the contact record account ID. So if you mention something off zero, what happens? This is called the list index out of bounds. If you're doing 200 records here, if you mention only of the zero, remaining 199 records will not be executed. Correct? So we should not pass any of the index value to the collections inside the loop. Okay, this is the third thing. No index should be mentioned in the collections. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't understand. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Are we good to start again? Okay. So you have understood the trigger, right? Up to this one, are you good or okay? If we are good up to this, what I'm trying to explain here is we have a one concept called trigger bulkification. Okay, bulkification in the sense our logics or business logic should support for any number of records. In real time, we are creating one record manually here, correct? So which means only one record at a time. In sometimes there might be hundreds of records will be created by using different tools, so that you will be see later by using your import wizard and data loader or workbench. Okay, hundreds of records will be created at once by using your data file, which is in from your local to Salesforce. Okay, so when you are creating hundreds of records at a time by using your Apex logic or import wizards or anything, at that point of time also your logic should support the limits. So we have the limits. Am I correct? So 100 SOQL per transaction, 150 per transaction, 5 the 50,000 rows transaction, right? If we are using this, our transaction should not hit more than this. Okay. When the bulkification happens here, when in the sense, okay, if SOQL was inside the for loops or loops, okay, inside the loops. Second thing is DML statements. As I said, insert, update, delete. These are the DML statements, right? We have these things also. Which one? Upset and delete. If any one of these DML statements inside the for loop, inside the loop, okay, more data rows retrieved, okay, in loops. The fourth point is the collection index was used. So these are the main things which will cause the trigger bulkification. Okay, in the sense when we use these sockets inside the for loop, what happens is it will hit this socket hundreds, correct? And the DML statements also same thing, and the rows also same thing. And and the last point is the collection. What is mean by collection? So if my list, if for the list of, if I use any of the index, so index in the sense what, if I have get the, so let's take this simple example. So if I use this, the collection will have the index, right? How do you know of the, I mean, how many of you know about the index? So index will be declared with the from starting 0, 1, 3, right? Etc. So this is 0, this is 1, this is 2, right? So here my list, the size is 3 and index is 0, 1, 2, right? If I use index of 0, which means that str list dot or str dot of 1. If I use of 1 is what? My index number, correct? If I use this will also will be failed, because if you are using a 200 records in a single transaction, if you use only one, in the sense always it will look for only one record, right? It will ignore the other records. So that's the reason we should not use the collection values, sorry, collection indexes. Okay, mostly. Okay, only when it is really required we can use it. That's it. And if and that should not be effect for the business logics. Okay, when you see all these things, what I'm trying to say here is these 200 records, right? In the Salesforce, the trigger.new, trigger.old, trigger.new map, trigger.old map will holds the entire transaction limits, correct? This is also one of the collection. This collection will holds 200 records each time. Let's say if I am inserting 2000 records here. Okay, even if I'm inserting 2000 records, this for loop internally, this will automatically holds for 200 records, and it will execute for the next times. So internally your logic should work for that level. Okay, now this 2000 will holds of this triggered at new, and this logic will be executed 2000 times inside the logic, correct? You know about the concept of the for loop, right? The loop in the sense what? We have the different loops. For loop in the sense we have, let's say we can declare integer I equals to 0, I less than 200, I plus plus. So here the logic will execute 200 times, right? Because it will loop through it I plus plus plus. So I equals to 0, I less than 200 through I plus plus. It will keep on increase, and then it will loop through the 200 times. This is one way of declaring the for loop. Okay, this is the anywhere you will use it, but colon object name. Collection. Okay, and object variables are here. New figure dot new map figure dot old map, right? These four are called collection variables. So these holds the entire records data into these things. We have to use this trigger at new, trigger at old, trigger at new map, trigger at old map. So as you know that the trigger at old will not be used in the inserts. Okay. So and old map also will not be used in the insert and insert. Okay. But the rest of the things, update and delete, we will use anything, right? Yes. Yes. Okay. So let me know where you lost from, when you lost after for loop, right? This one. This one, what I'm trying to say here is, this is a one way of declaring the for loops, correct? This is a in general way. But if we are using the s object, this s object we will use this way. Okay, object name, variable of that object, colon, which means the dynamic statement, and the collection variable. Here the collection variable in the sense what, in the trigger we will have trigger at new, trigger at old, trigger at new map, trigger at old map. Okay, so these will, if I'm inserting 200 records, which means the trigger dot new will holds the 200 records and the loop will be executed 200 times, correct? And this old will not be used in the insert state. In update and delete we can use the old and old map, but not in the insert. Okay, that is what I said. So let's see here, let's ignore this. So now see, the simple logic is that I want to update contact. Okay, whenever the new contact is being inserted, I want to pre-populate level value as the primary, right? So to do that, how I can do, I can go for the before insert of any record of the contact, I will set the variable. So if I want to loop through that, I need to get that record, correct? To get the record, as I said, I need to loop through the collection of the variables. So here for loop contact variable triggered at new. So now if I'm inserting a 2 for the 200 times, this loop will be executed here. Now I can equals to primary. If I said this, that's it. Whenever there is a new contact record is being inserted, at that point of time, the level will be set as a private. Sorry, the primary every time. Okay. Let's see this change. Okay. These are the nodes. So these nodes, and take it away from here. Put it over here. Deploy this to all. Okay. So let's try this one. I'm creating demo trigger and I'm blanking everything. Okay. Let's save now. As soon as you save this record, you can see this level has become the primary, correct? Understood, guys? If you insert for 200 records, if you insert the 200 records by using your data loader or the other tools, this will work out because we are not doing any of the DML statements and we are not doing any of the sockets, anything inside the for loop, right? This will work out. Let's assume that if I want to throw an error from a trigger, so we know about that, we can make a field required from the trigger also, correct? How you make the field required here? So let's see here. If contact record dot account id equals to null, okay, if my account id equals to null, what I can show here is for this particular context of the record, dot add error. You will have the one thing called add error method. So here you can enter that. Please enter the account name. Okay. So why we are doing that in the before, in the sense, as I said earlier, whatever we do, these statements should be executed in the before committing to the software database or software database, right? So that's the reason any validations or any pre-population things should be happening the before. This doesn't require any of the DML statements. Understood? Understood on this one, guys? So if I try to save this and deploy this, so now I used only in the for I want checking the account ID. If I want to check the same thing in my update also, let's say whenever there is an insert or update happened, I want to check the, if my account ID is null, I want to throw an error. So now I'm making the same validation in a, both the things, insert and update. Correct? Variable does not exist. Okay. Because see here, if you see here, if I directly use only this statement, this will not be executed because I want to loop through the trigger collections, right? Otherwise it won't accept. Understood, guys? So if I try to do this one, it will work out here. Okay. Now what I did was, if I'm trying to edit, I mean updating or inserting, account ID should be a required thing, correct? So now I'm just changing this to others and trying to say. If I try to say, see here, please enter the account name. The validation has been hit. Correct? So now what I have to do, I have to enter my account details over here. I think account field was not populated here. We can pre-populate that account. So here, okay. If I save this account now, it will be saved. Understood, guys? So this is so these are the simple things, correct? If I am trying to delete, let's say that I want to do something before delete of an contact. If my contact account is active, let's say that, so this is a requirement. So let's assume this. I'm trying to delete this contact. If this contact has a one account, correct? This account is have the account status equals to active. So here we have active equals to true, right? So let's say if the active equals to yes. Okay. If my contact account active equals to yes, then I should not delete this contact. Understood the requirement? When I'm trying to delete a contact, I want to do a validation check before deleting of this contact. Check if my account, I mean the contact related to account field of active equals to yes. Guys, you guys are able to understand the requirement? So how you can implement this into your trigger? Because your workflow will be work out, your process builder will not be work out, but the flow will be work out. But if I want to do that in my trigger, how do you do that? Sorry. So in this case, where you will write that logic, you write the logic. So requirement is this, right? Is deleting if the account record active value is yes, then so error. User can delete the contact record. This is understood, guys? How do you write this logic? How do you put this into your coding? You can't do this, but you can do flows. But I want to do this. We have to build our reference and how I can logic. Sorry. Is it my internet problem or internet problem? I don't know. Correct? So for this requirement, how do you proceed now? I just wanted to check with you guys how you are thinking. In a trigger. Okay. So when you see this one, what I'm trying to say here is when a contact record is deleting, if the contact account record is active equals to yes, then we have to throw an error. Correct? Which means before record is getting deleted. So I said if you are doing something, we have to do these kind of validation checks before it soft commits to the database. Correct? So here where we have to start is before delete. Correct? In the before delete. So always this is common for everything. Okay? The for loop object, reference of this object, trigger.world. So here the trigger.world will be used, not the trigger.new, because the reason is delete will doesn't have any of the new instance. Correct? So that's the reason that delete will always use the old trigger.old. Okay. So now check this. What we have to check now is first we have to check if if the contact has account or not. First, the first condition is that, right? If contact record has any of the account record or not is not equals to null. Correct? Only if the account If the contact account ID is not equals to null, then only we have to check, right? Now, how do you get the parent value from a child? How do you get the parent value from a child? You know the socket, correct? Now you have the account ID. By using this account ID, you will get the account record, correct? By using any of the IDs, you can get the record, correct? Here, account record you will get. Here, select ID comma active. I need only these two fields, correct? From account where ID equals to contact record dot account ID, which means that whatever the contact account ID is there, that account ID from the with this account ID will get the entire account record ID. Okay. So here, what we'll do, we'll check if account record dot active equals to yes, then throw a message, correct? But that adder of you cannot delete the contact when account is active. Understood, guys? Up to this. So when we have a requirement, think through how and when we have to write this. Okay, delete it. The delete will always use the word or not the new, because in the delete we are not putting a new value, correct? So it's always word. In this one, we'll check first if the contact doesn't have the account ID or not. If the account ID is there, from this account we will get the account record by using the socket, correct? Now I'm writing the socket. So select ID. I need what? Active field. So I'm using the active field from the account object where ID equals to contact account ID. Whatever I have in the account ID in the contact, by using that ID, I'm fetching the one record ID, one account record. So from here, account record dot active equals to yes. Then I'm throwing there. If not, I won't do any logic. Correct? So if I deploy this code to org, okay, this is run successfully, correct? Now let's check it out. So this contact have account ID, correct? Account ID in the sense account. Okay. In the background, always the API name. And this has active equals to yes, sir. Check it first. Active equals to yes. So which means if I'm trying to delete this contact, I should get an error. Okay. I'm trying to delete this. See here, there. You can't delete the content when account is active. Understood, guys? So now I'll explain you many things here. Is this logic is correct or wrong? I want to ask you. Is this best practice or not? Why? Exactly. So if I write this, what happens? if I delete 500 contacts from my database at a time, this software will execute 500 times. Correct. After reaching 100 SQLs, this will fail. So this is not the good practice. Correct. To do that, what is the practice? We have the collections. We have to make use of collection variables. So if I want to get any of the account records, what I have to do is I can use the map. In comma. Since one contact, we have only one account. Correct. Or I can use contact ID as a contact ID as a key, but contact ID will get the account card as a value. Correct. Map account records. Okay. Declaring this map of account, sorry. ID comma account. Declaring this. Understood, guys? So one more thing what I would like to ask here is, no, this is okay. So now for the contact account ID, I'll put here, and the respective account record will be present here. Now what I can simply do is, I will just know this logic. Okay. Here I'll keep it outside. So this is out of the loop, correct? So out of the, I can put this out of the loop. I'll explain this later. Okay. Here the contact account is not equals to null. Then what I can do is, my map dot out of, I can put the key. Key is what? Contact account ID is my key. In this one, I'm putting the null because I don't have any account record yet. Am I correct? If I have 200 records, 200 account IDs will be same here, even if the contact will have a duplicate account IDs. Correct. Because let's say I have contact 1, contact 2, contact 3, all the contacts will have the same account ID. Correct. So to avoid that, as key, I'm taking as a key as a key is always unique thing. Okay. I'm using account ID as a key here, and the value is null at this moment because we don't have any value here. So in the immediate thing, what I'm trying to do here is, instead of using in the for loop, I'm coming out of the for loop. You can here taking if my map dot size is greater than 0, or I can use dot is empty. Right? Anything I can use. Map dot is empty. Is not empty. So which means not. This is not empty. I will execute this logic. Correct? Here the logic is, I should not use this one. So here this variable equals to ID, and where ID in. If we are working with multiple collections, always use the in operator. Okay. In map dot, you have something called the key sets. Okay, key. This is key, right? Key set. If you have 200 IDs here, the 200 IDs it will be iterate into the in operator, and it will be use of it. So now you are using only one socle for the 200 records, and this map will contains the 200. ID here is account ID, and the record is entire account record will be stored into the map. Understood, guys? Now the simplest part is, again I will loop through again. Okay. Now I'm looping the map, not the SOQ here. Okay. Just think about in this way. So for I'm looping again. first what I'm trying to check here, if map dot, you have something called, I told you, contains key of contact record dot account ID, right? Which means if my map contains a key of contact account ID, which means in the map will I have the account ID or not? If that is true, then I'll get the value from it. Okay. Map dot get of key. This is object dot active equals to yes. Then it will check the both the conditions. If the map contains account ID and the map dot get means, okay, I'll simplify this one. Okay, I don't want to make it very complex for you. Hey, come on. Okay, if my map contains my contact account ID, okay, I'm using one more if here. If not if, I'm assigning the variable count record here. So here what I'm trying to do is map dot get of this one. If I do this one, what happens? Map dot get of any of the key will returns the value. Correct? Now it returns the value. So this account record will have the value now. Now I can directly check here account dot is active equals to yes. Then throw this error. Understand, guys? So if I do this one, now you are using your collection variable called a map. From this map, you are not doing any of the DML statements or SOQL inside your for loop. Correct? You are using the map. From making use of map, you are checking all the values with the key and getting the value with the key and checking the value. Correct? And throwing the error. So here, deploy this to server. Illegal assignment from list to map. 33. Okay. Successfully done, right? If you have already seen the whatever I gave the documentation for the collections, you will understand all these things. Okay. Otherwise, you don't understand. Okay. So we are using the map. Okay. With this map, I am declaring the map here. For this map, I am getting the all the values here. Okay. And for this one, I'm checking the account is active equals to yes. I'm throwing the error here. Okay. Let's check it again. This time, to make a different error message, you can't delete the account when record is. I'm just mentioning the good. Okay. You need to understand the change, right? I'm making this good. Now I'm trying to delete this contact. Are you sure? Yes. Good. So you can't delete the contact when account is active. Understood, guys? So now your trigger will work for any number of records. So this is what the trigger bulkification is. So one more important concept which I told you on custom labels and custom buttons, right? Let's say your requirement says that I don't want this message. I want to use my different message. Then coming and editing the trigger and deploying the trigger is very tough. Correct? It might looks very easy here, but in real time, that is not, that is a big task, because you have to create a ticket and you have to get approval, and your code has been to deploy to sandboxes to production, and you need some lot of approval processes. Correct? The maintenance is very huge when you are doing a change in any of the development. That's the reason I always said that if there is a chance of changing any of these kind of messages, what we have to use is, you guys have any idea? In this case, if I want to configure this message, how do I configure this message without touching the code? Sorry. Yeah. So here I'll go to the labels. Right, in the custom labels, one custom label saying that contact delete message. So here what I can say is, you cannot delete the contact when account is active. Okay. So now this custom label can be used in my trigger. Correct. So instead of all these things, simply what I can do is system dot label dot, which is my label. Correct. System dot label of this one will gives me the option. See here. Now you are not hard coded the value. Correct. Whatever you have written here, the same message will be appears here. See here. Correct. Now tomorrow, if the business thinks that this message is not looks good, if I want to change this to something else, okay, something like this. When account is active, you cannot delete the contact records. Okay. Please check with your admin. If I want to change with this thing, so this is very easy to change by the administrator itself. Correct. Because this doesn't really require any of the approvals. You can directly go and update it, so it will be reflected within a minutes. Correct. But if you want to if you want to make the change, you can't deploy the triggers to the live environment. So it requires a lot of approvals and it will take time. Right. To avoid all these things, whenever we require, we will use the custom labels or custom settings. See here. Now the message has been updated. Correct. Understand, guys? So today I can stop up to here. Okay. Yes, I'm doing it right away.